Hello, and welcome to the second video in the first-person shooter with Unity's new input system tutorial series. In this video, we will be creating the first-person raycast shooting using Unity's new input system. Just before we start, these videos take a long time for me to plan, script, record, and edit, so if you could just take a second to hit like and show your support, that would be really appreciated. If you find this video helpful, please consider subscribing, as only 7% of you currently are, and every new subscriber means a lot to me. Without further ado, let's get started. Here I have opened the project from the previous video in which we made the FPS controller, which this tutorial will be following off from. The first thing I'll do is double click on our player controls to open it up, then hit the plus in the actions, and create a new action called shoot. I'll select this no binding, and set the binding to the left mouse button, then hit save. Close this asset, and now we can create a new script in player, so right click, create, new C# script, and I'll call this gun. Give it a moment to compile, and then double click to open it up in Visual Studio. In here, the first thing that we'll need is a reference to a transform, which will be the camera, which I'll call cam, then a serialized field, float, which I'll call range. By default, I'll set this to 50, and then another serialized field, again a float, and I'll call this damage. This will be 10 by default. Next, in the awake function, so void awake, I'll say cam is equal to camera.main.transform. Camera.main will automatically give us the camera with the main tag on it, and as you can see, this has the main camera tag, and .transform as we referenced a transform here. Next, I'll create another function, which will be public void shoot. This will take no inputs, and I will say raycast hit to create a new variable, type of raycast hit, and if physics dot raycast starting from the camera dot position and moving in the cam dot forward direction, we will save the hit info to the hit variable, so out hit, and we want it to travel a maximum distance of range. If this is true, that means that we hit something, so I will say print hit.collider.name to get the name of the object that we hit. Now let's go over to the input manager. In here, all we have to do is say serialized field gun to reference the gun script, and I'll call this gun with a lowercase g. Now in the awake method, at the very bottom, I'll say ground movement dot shoot dot performed plus equals underscore, as we don't need any information, then the equal sign greater than for the arrow, and I'll call gun dot shoot, which is the method that we just wrote. Let's return back to the editor now. Then I'll drag and drop a gun model into our project. I'll leave a link to this in the description. I'll drag this into our scene view and parent it to the main camera. Next, I'll set its position on the X to 0.38, position on the Y to negative 0.309, and position on the Z to 0.88. These are simply values that I figured out I like in advance, and you can use any values that you would like here. Next, I'll right-click on the shotgun in the hierarchy and select Unpack Prefab. I'll click Add Component and type in gun to add the gun script that we just made. Next, I'll select our player and then assign the gun from our shotgun into the input manager slot. We should be able to hit play now and see it working. Great, I can look around, can still move and jump and do everything that we did before, but now we have a gun attached to our player. One thing that's kind of annoying to me is this cursor, which would be nice if it just disappeared when we hit play. To do this, I'll exit play mode and go back into our scripts, this time the mouse look script. I'll create a new function, void start, and in here I'll simply say cursor.lockState is equal to cursor.lockMode.locked. This will confine the cursor to the center of our screen. Then I'll say cursor.visible is equal to false. Now we should be able to return to the editor and hit play. Although we set cursor.visible to false, you will notice that we can still see the cursor. This is a bug with the new input system, and to fix it, let's exit play mode, then go into the project settings, so edit project settings, and under the player tab, you'll find active input handling. Change this from the new input system to both, select apply, save if you have to, and wait for the editor to restart. Once the editor restarts, you can close the project settings and hit play again to test it out. You'll see that the cursor now hides itself properly. Next, it would be nice to know where we're shooting, so let's exit play mode again, and I'll create a crosshair by right-clicking in the hierarchy, going to UI and Image. I'll press F2 to rename and call this crosshair. I'll set its color to black and its opacity to 150. Next, I'll set its width and height both to 5, then select its anchor, hold Alt, and click in the middle. This will center it on the screen automatically. Finally, I'll set its source image to a knob, which is close to a circle. Now if I hit play, it should be much easier to see where we're shooting. The last thing we'll do in this tutorial is create a damageable object. For this, I'll simply create a new cube, so right-click, 3D Object, and Cube. I'll set its position to -3 on the X, 0.5 on the Y, and 7 on the Z, just that we can see it, then create a new material for it. Under Assets, I'll create Material, and call this m_damageable. I'll drag and drop this to apply it onto the cube, and set its color to a reddish brown. Next, I'll create a new folder, call this Damageables. We can actually drag and drop our material into this folder to keep things organized, and then create a new script, so new C# script, and call this Damageable. Double-click to open it up in Visual Studio. This script will be quite simple. All we need to do is say serialized field, float, max health, and I'll set this to 100 by default. Under this, I'll say float for the current health. In the awake method, I'll say current health is equal to max health to initialize the object. After this, I'll say public void take damage. This will take an input type of float called damage, and in this function, all we have to say is current health minus equals damage. Then we'll say if the current health is less than or equal to 0, then we will call another function, which we can simply call die. Let's create that now. So void die, parentheses, and in this function for now, I'll simply print the name plus was destroyed. Underneath this, I'll destroy this game object. Now in the gun script, instead of printing the name of the collider, I'll say if the hit.collider.getComponent, and we'll get the damageable component, is not equal null, so this checks that we actually hit something that can be damaged, then we'll say hit.collider.getComponent damageable, and then we'll call the take damage function that we just wrote, passing in the damage. Back in the editor now, give it a moment to compile, then drag and drop the damageable component onto our cube. If I play the game, we should be able to destroy the cube. After 10 clicks, we destroy the cube. To make it a bit more obvious when we hit something, let's add some effects. To do this, let's open up the Unity Asset Store under Windows, Asset Store, then search for War FX. Select this asset, which is free, then select download. This shouldn't take too long to download, and once it's done, we can add it to our project. Once it finishes downloading, click Import, then I'll leave everything selected and select Import. Once it finishes importing, we can close the asset store and then go back into our damageable script. In here, at the top, I'll create a new variable. This will be serialized field game object, and I'll call this the hit effect. Now in the take damage function, we'll add in a few more parameters. First will be vector3 hit pos, and the second one will be vector3 hit normal, which is the direction at right angles to which the object was hit. Now before we do anything, I will instantiate the hit effect at the hit position, and its rotation will be quaternion dot look rotation towards the hit normal. Now in the gun script, we need to edit the take damage call. We'll pass in damage, then the hit dot point for the hit position, and also the hit dot normal. Finally, we can go back into the editor, then choose a hit effect which we want applied to the cube. I will choose the concrete hit effect, so select our cube, drag and drop the concrete onto the hit effect, then we can hit play to test it out. You will see that if I hit the cube, the effect is spawned with the correct orientation, and if I keep shooting it, it will eventually be destroyed. That's it for this tutorial. I hope you found it useful. If you did, make sure to smash like and subscribe since it really helps my channel out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.